So what exactly is the ancient otherworld? The best way to learn about what the ancient otherworld is to learn about what it isn't. Do we think it could be about this? Or is it about this? Or this? Or even this? I remember the author C.G. Brown talking to me about a tribe she was researching, and she said when they saw something disappear across the horizon, like a cloud or a bird or a person, they believed that once that object had disappeared, that it had disappeared into the other world. It's an interesting idea, an interesting concept. It's rather like playing peekaboo with a baby when you sort of do this, and when you're gone, you're not in existence. But then when you go, hello, I'm here, then you're suddenly in this world and not in the other world. I think this is a good way of instructing ourselves about the other world to a degree. We also need to think about the idea of the dream world, something we don't have control of, but something that has control of us, i.e. a dream. You wake up in the morning and you say, I had this odd dream, I was stepping in a door and then I was on a boat and then I was walking through a field. They're very disjointed, but it's probably another good way to see what the ancient otherworld is. The idea of the other world has often been shaped mostly by New Age folk. They talk about the other world, or as they sometimes refer to it, as an alternative reality within areas of neo-shamanism. And when I've listened to people talk about this, I somehow get a little bit confused because it isn't actually my understanding of the other world. Most tribal folk, hunter-gatherer folk, people who go back a long, long way, would speak about the other world in a very, very different way from the way people who take part in neo-shamanism would. The symbolism, the images, the sounds, everything is very subtle, but also everything is very representative of what we have going on inside us. The other world, we must remember, is millions and millions and billions of years old, and it does not respond to personal whims. What we need to do is to understand that the other world is an extension of the natural world. It's not an extension of your material life per se. If you wanted to support true shamanism, you don't need to assume that power for yourself. Most real tribal shamans sort of do it all in the background. They're very modest people. The other world is also associated with prehistory. I see Stonehenge and other stone circles as political statements. When you think of tribal people, hunter-gatherers gathered together in bands all across the land, nobody's taking any control or assuming any power. I'm talking about 10,000 years ago, I suppose, in some parts of Europe where tribal people could roam and live freely. It's all to do with the advent of farming. From my point of view, farming brought more power because it meant that you had power over the land, and you also had power over the people who were your neighbours, and they might be hunter-gatherers. So what does all this have to do with the other world? It has a lot to say about the other world, because when suddenly power and control were rife in people's lives when they were farmers, it meant that it changed your outlook on just about everything you ever did. When people gather together today at Stonehenge for solstice celebrations, I think we tend to think that way back when the stones were first erected, people could gather together, come together, enjoy something, but I don't believe that's quite true. When I look at Stonehenge, I see a powerhouse. What we've got to remember is that the tribal folk, hunter-gatherers, scattered around, would have been behaving in exactly the same way as they'd done for thousands of years. And just consider this. Suddenly, stones are put up. Stones are taken from the ground, wherever we believe they came from, and they purportedly catch the sunlight at solstice time. My question is, why would tribal people need to do that when they've lived with the sun and the moon and the stars and the rain and the wind for thousands of years? The answer is that farming wanted to claim power. So the tribal people were kind of becoming outdated. We could say the other world was becoming outdated as it transformed and developed and evolved and changed into something we might not have expected to happen, especially if we were hunter-gatherers. I believe that religion grew out of a wounded and troubled relationship with the other world. You could say religions grew out of social trauma. Each religion answered the need for the other world by creating an afterlife, by creating prophets and gods and deities, and all of these were replacements for the otherworld spirits that used to exist for thousands of years with hunter-gatherers. She had no beginning. She had no end. In deepest prehistory, the other world thrived. Earth was the ultimate, supreme, all-nourishing being, and the other world was her sister, and she was recognized as such by all the creatures who lived with her. Those creatures recognized a need for the other world. No matter if they were land-based, air-based, ocean-based, they were integral to what she was, and all had the nature of Earth contained within them. For millions of years, the other world remained the same. Only she had the power to change things. None of her land-based, air-based, ocean-based derivatives changed along with her, and none of them wanted to, except humans.